Alright folks, so we are back. I decided to go ahead and just start a second video, and we are on this bottom example, and our first attempt would be when it says find the zeros from 4.2, I should try to factor it. The more you try to factor it, the more I think you're going to be able to see that it's not factorable, but I would look for a GCF first, which there's not. And here I'm going to GCF out an x squared and get x plus 1. And then when I'm supposed to have twinsy parentheses with x plus 1 here, and I'm trying to GCF this, there is nothing I can GCF out of this to ever make x plus 1, so it is not factorable. So again, not factorable. Noting the shape, it's still the same shape as before, and I still am going to have 3 answers. So unfortunately, they didn't give me a clue like they did here, so I'm going to have to use this rational root theorem so I can see what would possibly work. So just a reminder, I'm going to take the factors of my constant at the end. So factors of 10, I'll have a positive and negative set of them, and here they are in numerical order. And then I'll take the factors of my leading coefficients, so there's an invisible 1 there. And now I'm going to make a fraction where these numbers are my numerator and these are my denominators. So my possible solutions are going to be numerator, so 1 over 1, 2 over 1, 5 over 1, 10 over 1, and then I would still have the negative version of all of them. So I have not 4, but 8 possible solutions. So if you didn't have a calculator, a graphing calculator, you would have to start, I guess I can do this, your synthetic division. I'd put 1, 1, negative 1, and negative 10 in there. And I would see, does 1 work? Does negative 1 work? Does 2 work? Does negative 2 work? Does 5? Does negative 5? Till 10? Does negative 10? And once I get 0 at the end, then I found one that works, and I don't have to check any of the others. But we're not going to do that because we do have the graphing calculator. So I'm going to go to my y equals button. I'm going to type this in. Make sure you are hitting the subtraction button, not the negative button. I'm going to go to my table now, and it's still keeping all of these numbers in there. I can just go to the top and type over them. So I'm going to see, does 1 work? No. Does negative 1 work? And I just want to double check I typed it in right. X cubed, I should have double checked that first. All right, so 1 and negative 1 are out. 2, negative 2, oh, 2's working. So I'm going to stop. I'm just going to go ahead and go with 2. So I'm going to put 2 here. And I'm going to start, bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, add these up. 2 times 3 is 6, add these up. 2 times 5 is 10, and sure enough, when I add them up, I get 0. So 0 here means we have factors, it means it's going to work, we got a solution, we've got one of our first zeros. So this is the remainder, constant x squared, and now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to try to factor it. So we're going to try to factor x squared plus 3x plus 5. And remember, if it's not factorable, we still have our backup method. We'll use the quadratic formula. So here goes my x, and I need factors of 5x squared that make 3x. And unfortunately, this is not factorable. So we're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So with that quadratic formula, just a reminder that a is 1, b is 3, and c is 5. And I'm going to use this space over here to do that. So it goes x equals opposite of b, so negative 3, plus or minus, I'm going to take b and square it. Since I have a calculator, I'll let that do my work for me. Minus 4 times a times c. And then all of this will be over 2 times a, so it'll be over 2. And from there, what I'm going to do is get the number under the radical down to 1 number, and I'm just going to turn on my calculator, get out of this, so second mode to quit, clear out my screen, and I'm just going to put in parentheses 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. I get a negative 11, and now we need to talk about what that means. So remember, I'm supposed to have 3 answers. This quadratic formula is going to give me 2 of those 3 answers. Once with the plus, once with the minus. What I need for you to understand, though, is that when we take the square root of a negative number, it's imaginary. So what I'm going to do is put an I there, and now that 11 is not negative in there anymore. And this is a really good answer. So we've talked about good, better, best. 11 is not perfect. That's why we couldn't factor here. But 11 also doesn't have any factors that are perfect. So this is it. This is as good as it can. When I graph this, so what I'm going to do is, it's already in there. I just want you to hit graph. Here comes that same shape. I'm going to just adjust my window just a little bit here so you can see what I'm talking about. Anytime we are doing this, finding the zeros, we're seeing where our answers hit the x-axis, but only real numbers hit the x-axis. And these two solutions are going to be imaginary solutions. So that's why of my 3 answers, 2 of them are imaginary. I'm not seeing those 2 answers hit the x-axis. I am seeing 1 answer hit the x-axis, and that's the one that we used here too. So keeping up with this trend of writing your factors, writing your zeros, I don't have a lot of room, but I'm going to put it down here. So I'm going to put the zeros here, and I'm going to put the factors below. So 1 0 is the one that we sometimes forget about, 2. And the factor that would have gotten me there is x minus 2. But we have another 0. It's not a real solution, but it's still called a 0, and that's this. And again, just a reminder, imaginary numbers do not make it onto graph paper. And the factor that got us there was the factor, this part that we couldn't factor. So it's still considered a factor. We had to use the quadratic formula to get it down further. So I do have 3 answers. 1, 2, 3. This factor made that answer. This factor made that answer. All right, we're going to do one more together, and then I'm going to have you try the next 2 on your own, and then go into your practice. So in this video, what I'm going to try to do is I need to solve. So same thing, just different directions. Definitely won't even try to factor this one because there are 5 terms, and I've not shown you how to factor with 5 terms. All right, so let's come up with our list because they didn't give us anything to choose from. So again, you take factors of the constant, so 8. I'll have a positive and negative version of these numbers. So remember, there's not 4 numbers here, there's 8. And then I'll take factors of the leading coefficient, so that's 1 and 2. And now here come my possible solutions. All right, so again, these are the numerator. These numbers will be the denominator, so 1 over 1 is 1, 2 over 1 is 2, 4 over 1, 8 over 1. But now I'm going to put these numbers over 2, so 1 over 2 is a half. 2 over 2 is 1, so I'm not going to write it again, I'll just leave it as 1. 4 over 2 is 2, don't need to rewrite it, and 8 over 2 is 4, so I don't need to write this one. So, possible numbers, I have a total of 10 numbers, the positive and the negative version of all of these. So, if I didn't have a graphing calculator, I would have to start my synthetic division, check in my countdown, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, I'm good. I'm going to put those numbers in. And without a graphing calculator, I would have to see, does 1 work? If it does work, I should get 0 at the end. If it doesn't work, then I would try -1, 2, -2, but we don't have time to do that. So I'm going to go to my graphing calculator. I'm going to enter this equation, the original one. So bear with me while I do that. You should practice this too. Remember, use minus sign, the subtraction sign, not the negative sign. Once you get that typed in, I should just double check that it's correct. I'm going to go to my table, so second window, and I'm going to start putting these numbers in, and I'm looking for the first one that works. So 1, -1, 2, oh, and 2's working. I'm done. I'm not even going to try any of the others. All right, so 2, when I do synthetic division, should give me 0 at the end, so I'm going to start, drop down to 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Add those up. Now -1 times 2, add those up. 8 times 2, add those up. Final round of multiplication, and I get 0. So, a reminder, this is the remainder. This is the constant, this is x squared, and now we have an x cubed. So we're going to take this, I'm going to write it up here, and we are going to factor it. Now this time we have 4 terms, so I will be doing that grouping method. So I'm going to start with the parentheses, grouping them, and in my first step I'm going to look for a GCF. I can take out an x squared, and that means I still have a 2x squared minus 1 in my first parentheses, and I'll make my twinsy parentheses. And so what can I factor out of this? So in my class I told them, if you can't see it, just take this -4 and divide it by the -1, and then that would be your GCF, and you can take a 4 out. So if I distribute the 4 back in, I get the 8x squared, and if I distribute the 4 into this term, I get the -4. Alright, here are my factors. So the twinsy parentheses are 1, and those GCFs are the other. Anytime you factored, remember, can you factor more? Is there a difference of squares in any of these? Because these are squares. No to this one, because this is not a nice square root. And no to this one, because this is addition, not subtraction. So we are ready to go from here. Remember, we're about to get 4 answers. If I did graph this, this would be my end behaviors. Or in my class, we would just draw on kind of the whole thing. It didn't flip because it's a +2. And now I'm going to take this, set it equal to 0, this one set it equal to 0 to get my 4 answers. So this 2 is telling me right here I'm about to get 2 answers. So I'm going to add the 1, I'm going to divide the 2, and then I'm going to square root 1/2. I do not know the square root, well I do know the square root of 1/2, but square root, you can put in the fraction, you can put in the decimal, but the square root of 1/2 is 0.71 if we round it, but I'm supposed to get 2 answers, so remember there's a negative version of that answer. So there's 2 of them. And on this one, I'm going to subtract the 4, square root, and when I square root a -4, you could even do that on your calculator, square root -4, I get 2i, and there's supposed to be 2 answers, so the other one is a -2i. And 4 answers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and the answer we don't want to forget about is, hold on, where did I mess up? Sorry, I just realized I made this mistake. I apologize, folks. So, very small. This should have been a 2x here. So, yeah, I was done at a half, not that. So, just a little erasing there. My apologies. All right, so 5 answers. 1, 2, 3, or sorry, 4 answers. 1, 2, 3, and then there's that 4th answer. So, in your homework, I'm going to ask, at least I am, that I'll make a list of my zeros, my final zeros, my final answers, and all the factors that got me there. So one set of zeros was the positive and the -2i, and that came from the factor x squared plus 4. Another 0 was 1/2. That came from the factor 2x minus 1. And my other 0 is the 2 that I used here, and I will have to make the factor of x minus 2. So standard form, writing these left to right, side by side, wrapped in parentheses, that would be factored form. I have 4 answers, but only 2 of them are real. So these make it on graph paper, and these don't. And if you want to see what it looks like, you can just hit graph. It's going very slow. And there's 1, and there's 2, my 2 solutions. Imaginary solutions never make it on the graph paper. All right, at this point, I'm going to suggest you try the next 2. There will be a follow-up video. If you don't get the right answers, that's how I'm going to start. I'm going to present the answers to you. And then if you don't get the right answers, then watch the video and see where you messed up. So tune into the next video. If you're feeling really good about this, then I guess you could always have the option just to start right in on the practice.